Welcome back, everyone, to the Serial Optimist podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, as you know, and we have a very special guest today who is not only another business owner, friend, future father-in-law, is Mr. Mark Dillon, who owns Natek Corporation here in Saratoga for the last, 30 years?
30 plus.
30 plus years. Yay. Thank you so much for coming on today, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I'm going to jump right into this. I think it would be fun for people to know more about you, your company, and really where it all started. I think would be a really great place to start.
All right. Excellent. Well, after college, after I got my degree, I got into sales and in some of the positions I had while working for other companies, the requirements were traveling all over the Northeast. So I was on the road Monday through Fridays, and it was just getting crazy as far as the amount of travel requirements. So at one point, I was looking at trying to do things that twofold allowed me to be based, where I could either work out of my house, and it's kind of ironic because here we are, and that's the way, hybrid or fully remote is now, the big rave. But 30 some years ago, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go. So,
You were already
I
ahead of the times back then.
and that's it. But I knew, as I was, trying to raise a family and the direction I wanted to go, I knew, traveling and commuting and just being gone Monday through Fridays, it wasn't conducive to a family life. So looked at different opportunities, and I ended up, pulling the trigger. And again, Tony Robbins is probably a big influence because, there it's follow your dreams, and you listen to them, and really that's what I did. So I said, if I'm ever going to kind of start my own business or try to go out on my own, now's the time to do it. So I ended up giving up a paid, position with a company vehicle, and started a recruiting business where I went from making a paycheck to, basically hunting and eating what I killed, or making straight commissions. So the first 6 months, let's just say that as I was stumbling through a lot of different stuff, my wife Debbie would always say, "Oh, we are going to starve," because again, when you're learning, again, you're learning and you're growing, and things are, moving forward, but also, you always second guess yourself. Am I making the right decision? But and 30 plus years afterwards, definitely made the right decision, and without, certainly, some, ups and downs, but, at the end of the day, wouldn't trade it all.
I love that. That is, I think that's most entrepreneurs, no matter where you are in life right now, whether it's back 30 years ago to now, the entrepreneurship journey is hard, no matter how you skin it. It's usually a grind. It's very rare that people face where they go into business and it just comes easy immediately. I think a lot of celebrities and influencers, but again, you built up to that. Like that doesn't just happen overnight. And it's the same thing with business. Like, when I started my business, I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to be doing. And I'm
Right,
hoping I make some money. And then it's like you have some really good months and bad months. And then you start to figure out your groove where it's more consistent.
right.
But that's the hardest part in the beginning. Would you say, like, when was probably like the year that you felt like you really started to hone your craft and like this was like, okay, my best year? Like, I now know what I'm doing.
And you're always growing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So there wasn't like, oh, I got it now. And that's part of any entrepreneurial that is always growing. It's not like in business. All right, I'm at this level now. I can breathe. It's more of you're always climbing the ladder. And I think a good entrepreneurial type of a person always wants to keep climbing. So I still don't think that I'm at the top of my game, and I still have areas to go and grow and learn. So I think, until the end of my life, I still want to be climbing that ladder to some degree.
Love that. I think one thing that many young people talk about right now is like, I just want to like be retired and be done at like 30, or I want to work and have passive income. And then it's like, I actually used to think that a little bit. I was like, oh, like I'll be done. And it was really more like I want financial freedom by 35, 40, but I still have, hopefully, God willing, 30, 40 plus more years in my tank. And I personally love working. I feel like a lot of passion and purpose with it. For you, I mean, you're, at retirement age, you're not stopping anytime soon. It seems like you have more energy than I do usually most days. And so are you kind of, is that where you stand with your business, that it gives you that purpose?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I got into the business that I did get into, which is executive recruiting, and the reason is as long as I have a phone, Wi-Fi, computer access, it's not. I can do this for as long as I want to do this. In fact, that was purposely something that I wanted to go in where you have people saying, "All right, I'm going to be doing this for 20 years, and I got to find the next show that I want to be part of or do or watch or whatever." In in my business, I can do it for as long as, and things are always changing. So it's never getting, old where, oh, poke my eyes out. I can't do this anymore. And who knows, there may be, a day where, I'm looking at different activities that other than recruiting, but boy, some of the biggest successes that I've seen and that I like in my business is when I help somebody and get them their dream job and be able to get them the increase to help them do what they need to do on their family life or their personal life as well as their career goals, or find somebody who's an executive and watch them go from being an engineer to a manager and then working with them through their career and then placing them as a president, and then they turn around and buy the company, and then they hire me to staff all their people. that that gives me joy, and that's one of the big pluses of the business that I'm in.
Now, I think anyone who's in staffing who is in it long enough feels, I feel like that's a pretty normal feeling because that's really what keeps you in there. And I mean, you know me, I was in staffing for almost a decade in a variety of industries. And so for me, it was the same thing. I felt really good being able to find like that dream job for someone that they've been wanting to find, or maybe it's a better work-life balance, it's more money. They're getting, that raise that they haven't gotten at the company they've stayed at forever. So there's so much purpose in the staffing industry in general, whether you're on the sales or recruiting side. I'm really curious about your industry though, because you're in the energy industry, and I've always been curious of like how that's evolved the last 30 years. Because in my brain, it's like energy back in the day was gas and oil, and now it's really evolved to like a much more eco-friendly, everything's electric. Like, how has that evolved over the years in the industry that you're in?
And it has evolved tremendously. But at the end of the day, everybody needs, and that's what I tell candidates that want to even get into the energy business, if they're from the IT business or they're from other businesses that may have ups and downs. And don't get me wrong, energy has ups and downs, but for the most part, what I tell everybody is I said, when times are good and companies are growing and expanding, they're always looking for the most energy efficient, building efficiency type of areas and items, and whether it's lighting or HVAC to add, so they're always looking to reduce costs and also stay on the energy efficiency sustainability side of the fence is certainly a focus as well. But when times are bad and companies have to restructure or have to look at, in order for us to stay open, energy efficiency costs are their number one cost in many times. So they're always welcome companies to come in if they can reduce costs to keep them afloat. So what I tell a lot of candidates that are thinking about going into this field is, whether it's good times or bad, there's still a need, for individuals that have talents within the energy sustainability industry. Whereas, say, on the environmental side, a lot of times environmental, are more regulatory driven. So companies are looking at, well, if you don't do this, then we're going to come in and maybe put a fine on, or you're going to be mandated this in order to do this. Whereas the energy efficiency, you have clients, or companies going to different end users, and they're saying, we're at the end of the day, we're coming in and trying to reduce your costs, and here's how we can do it. So I think that's a big
No,
thing.
no, that does. No, no, it definitely does. And I think so many companies, like at the end of the day, everything's bottom line driven. If you can save a company money or you can at all be on the conversation of we can help reduce costs here, reduce spend, I can be more efficient. I think that's your sell. Because at the end of the day, like I don't know a business owner who isn't concerned, especially this year. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of companies, small businesses specifically, it's been a pretty slower, a little bit of a weird year. I think the beginning of the year was really heavy for a lot of businesses, including mine. And then I noticed a big slowdown in a variety of industries that I was in. Like hospitality took almost a 20% hit this year, just in bookings in general. People weren't traveling as much, the economy, inflation, cost of food, and then, we had our big election and I think everyone was like, oh, the election's going to happen. Then right after, like, I'm ready to go. And we're not actually seeing that. Like, we're seeing a lot of companies still being really uh, keeping their budget close to the vest and looking to see what happens in 2025. So I think you have the right mindset and you're in a really good industry where energy is just always top of mind and it always is something that you have to survive and keep things going.
Right, right, right. So no, you're 100% right.
Um, As far as your role, like can you talk more about like your company and your business? Because I think I've always been intrigued by how you run your business. You've always kept it pretty small. And some people scale, 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 and they want to have a ton of employees to manage and they are looking to kind of evolve it into it. You have been very hands-on. So I'd love to kind of hear like why you did that and the benefits, maybe pros and the cons to that, for any of our aspiring entrepreneurs listening.
Well, and I had, other than Natek, I had owned different companies where I had other employees, and trying to and again, being involved in different businesses. And what I would say is a lot of times you're only good as your employees that are supporting you and working for you and or with you. And I decided, by running multiple companies, that I did want to be lean and mean. And I think at one point when I first started, in the recruiting side, oh, we had to have this person do this, we had to have that person do that. And again, one of the directions that I would say was took me down a wrong path was I justified having to have all these people involved supporting the business and doing the processing, and money was going out, and then at the end of the day I didn't, after paying everybody, I go, boy, there's nothing left for me, or not where I wanted to go. So I purposely made a decision to try to be a little more lean and mean, and also have the flexibility to be able to be nimble. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of folks that come in and obviously do startups and then build them and have hundreds and thousands of employees. That wasn't for me. That wasn't a direction that I wanted to go.
No, and I think actually a lot of small businesses and startups get in trouble on both sides of that. Like I see people like I was talking to a company, they've been in business for over a decade. They've never hired anyone to help them and they were like, "Oh, we want to scale." They've done really well on their own and like you, they've run really lean and been very profitable. But sometimes there comes a time where you do need to have that support where maybe your lifestyle changed and you don't want to be as hands-on and you need to have that support. So I think there's benefit on that side. And then I see it on the opposite where everyone outsources everything and they're not profitable. And then they're like, well, how do I scale? I'm like, well, who's doing the scaling? Who's doing the job of sales? Because sales is how you scale. And if you aren't doing it or if you don't have someone who's doing it and you're just paying everyone, like it's almost like running a passive business, which is
Right.
fine, but you're not going to make a ton of money. And I'm kind of like in the middle right now. And I think where I am and where I see Happy Brands going is I love the sales aspect. It's really funny because I did staffing for a long time and I was good at it and I enjoyed it. And then there came a time where I was like, okay, this isn't right for me. I don't know what the off thing is, but I know something is off in my career. And so that's where I kind of moved over from sales to marketing. And I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this. I really enjoy it. But I also love owning and running my own company and my own business. And so that's kind of where I feel like I've melded two worlds where I'm like, I love growing it and I'm good at the sales piece, which is why I'm the sales driver for my company. But I also love the creative side and the strategy and building it. But I have girls on my team that are way better at it than me. So I'm like, my clients, I'm like, you want Maddie doing this. You want Taryn doing this. They're younger. They are on social media all the time. They're taking in trends and they have like this energy where I can tell them, I can see it. I can see like the high level and then the actual work is really where they come in.
Right. Well, and a lot of time, a lot of the positions that I'm placing are either the executives saying, Mark, I need, and I'm currently working on a couple of positions now in the energy field lighting, where the vice president saying, I, that's my strength is out in front of the clients. If I'm getting pulled in into the weeds, I need that. I'm getting pulled in too much, and I need that back office support to help me to stay focused on the front end. I just placed a vice president and a VP of operations, and for the person I placed as a president, who now owns a company, and same thing. He goes, I need to be able to work on my business rather than working in my business. So I need the VP of operations. I want the project man. I want, and he goes, I get dragged into projects that, you know, I should have other people be doing that. So I think a lot of that, again, you got to know your business and know, where your focus is as well as where some of your strengths
100%. And that's me. But it's really interesting now that I think about this. You are basically the sales driver. You are the sales driver of your company. And you also like recruiting is really unique because that's really like recruiting is the sales and it is like building in, finding candidates, finding people for companies to partner with. So it's almost like this is an incestuous role where you're doing sales, recruiting, and you're kind of building this thing all together where like mine is it's different. It's marketing. So it's providing like a very specific service that whatever they need for, but it's not necessarily tied to the sales piece. It not doesn't necessarily mean it's drive to recruiting. It can obviously with advertising, etc. But yours is like I feel like one of the biggest needs in talent acquisition is like probably the biggest challenge most corporations have internally, and that's why they reach out to companies like you, where you are basically like for me, I'm doing sales and then it's like I'm selling the marketing. You are doing sales, but it's also like you're selling the recruiting, but you also are doing both. I don't know. And my brain just like went in this direction where I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense.
well, and I do have, and I have my daughter that working for me, Lauren, and
Yep.
she's doing a phenomenal job. And she's the talent acquisition manager that does a lot of the back office, the sourcing, the marketing from the standpoint of staying on top of all the some of the social media stuff, and then responding to different individuals that are looking to pitch me stuff. So it allows me to stay focused on
Hmm.
working and dealing with the clients, and then being able to work, and I have another individual, Lauren, that works for me, but for the most part I do like being lean, and that's what works in
No, I love that.
for me.
That's if you aren't detail oriented, hire someone who is, and
Right.
or have someone who can just help out with that back end work because there always is it's administrative work, and us salespeople generally don't like doing that.
Yeah.
We're not usually great at it.
Well, and a lot of times too, you can be busy but not productive. And
Yes.
when you get sucked into so much process and so much, the in the weeds, you're not out in front of the client. And when you're not out in front of the client, revenue's not coming in. The door's not, and that's my business. Phone's not going to ring if I'm not out there making it, building those relationships and having that phone
What would you say is like one of your best tips for staying really organized throughout your day? Because you've been in this long enough where I'm sure you found a process and it might be ever evolving, but some people block chunks of time off. I know you have a very set routine that you do every morning. What has been like the differentiator for you to be most productive?
right. And I think for me, working in blocks of time, morning is when that's I try to get the toughest things or the things that maybe I don't like to do as much out of the way in the morning, and just stay focused and driven in certain tasks. And then I work in blocks of time, so I'm not getting bored, or getting dragged into things that is going to take a lot longer. So I try to work 2 hours, on each different whatever I'm task that I have to accomplish. The other is as far as is just and again, staying in the seat. That's having that relentlessness of being, what I always say, success, doesn't come from luck. It's showing up every day and putting yourself and being sitting in the seat and working. So it's so easy to be distracted, or like I said before, justify, oh, I got to do this process, and that takes you off of generating or doing steps to generate revenue, and you justify it. Well, I got to do this in order for billing, or I got to do this, because somebody wants that. So a lot of times too, the administrative stuff, if I can, I try to push that at the end of the day. Or if I'm sending out resumes and I need to think about, and I'm sending submittals and writing, why I feel the person's a fit. And, I need time to with less distractions. So a lot of times I'll carve out different times where I won't pick the phone up even if it rings. I try not to, because that is, obviously money coming in, but, there's times where I got to say, all right, I just need quiet time to get this done. So
No,
work and block of time.
yeah, no, blocks of time is what I found that works well for me too. And you and I are so similar. It's always what we talk about because Blake is very similar to Deb and I'm very similar to you as far as like energy and how our brains work. And I'm the same. Like it's very easy for me to get distracted. And so I now will put my phone on airplane mode for like 2 hours, and that's like my 2 hour chunk. And if someone emails me, like a client, now thankfully we've moved to a new model where the girls on my team are really the communication with the client. But if it's a conversation a client wants to have or they have a question, I'm like, is this urgent? Do I need to do this right now? Because if it's not, then I have to move this because as soon as I used to say yes to everything, like, oh yeah, I'll take this right now. And then I would be doing all this little work all the time. And then I wouldn't be productive. And then I'm like, oh, shit, I look at the end of my day and then I'm like, oh my gosh, like huge things on my list didn't get done. And so I think you have to ask yourself that, like even your team, like I tell my team, like I'll get to this later. Like this, if it's not a priority, I'm not getting to this right now. Um, I think that's really important. But I think what you said about doing the hardest task early in the morning, that is something that I've had to do because I'm someone like most people. I rather put that task I don't want to do off and then it's way harder or you don't get it done in the
Right.
afternoon. So it's like I try to just get like the hardest things done first because then it feels like a real win when you get it done. And then the rest of the day gets a lot more productive and easier, I found.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So now, Mark, so what are, we've talked about some wins. It sounds like creating this lifestyle balance for you. I know your office is great. Your office is literally like a straight up office at your house, which is great that you can have, Lauren there, and you can even have one more person in there and probably still make it work. So I think that's always been nice to be close to home with your
Right.
family, raising kids. That's Blake and I love that we both have a home office. Now, looking at that side of it, what would you say is like you have like a lot of wins, I think, through your business, and we all have wins and losses. I would love to hear if you're comfortable sharing any big losses or like big lessons that you learned along your journey and as an entrepreneur.
And again, everybody. So I believe in my situation, one of the directions that I went that I definitely learned a lot from was going into a certain vertical or certain niche because the overall industry was was in a slump, and I said, "Oh, I got to change gears quick. I got to go this direction." And sometimes you do have to have that flexibility to do that. But going into an unfamiliar market where I said, "All right, I knew there's going to be a ramp up in that area, but I'm going to do it anyways." And then as just the overall businesses kind of came back, I found myself in a certain vertical and industry that wasn't really my niche, and because of that, the strategic focus that I had was off, and it took me a long time to say, all right, I need to get back to the basics. I need to kind of play to my strengths. Need to recalibrate how I do not only the business, so it wasn't a failure. It just I had to recalibrate what I was
Mm,
doing, and a lot of times what that does, and what I always say is that that failure, was as far as taught me that as far as looking at opportunities is as important, picking the right ones as it is evaluating the wrong ones. So, and what I mean by that is, if it doesn't feel right, if it's not, if you're not getting the traction that you're looking at, definitely be flexible and definitely be able to pivot, and rather than kind of sinking with the ship.
yeah.
And that's what really, because there's a time where, and again, I started justifying, oh, I can, as long as I hang in here in this one, and as long as I keep doing this. And then if you keep on banging your head against the same wall and you don't move, and walk around that wall, that's the failure. But if you learn from it and you grow from it and you go, all right, let me try something different, that it's not a failure, it's a life learning lesson, and that's the difference.
Well, I think too, like knowing when to cut your losses is hard for a lot of people to grasp because they feel like, oh, I failed because I walked away. Like, I mean, I've done this many times in my career, in the
Right.
totality of my career, but in my own business, I've learned where I'm like, okay, like this actually isn't an industry that we do well in or we enjoy, or
Mhm.
maybe it's really volatile. And I knew that it was like, I didn't feel like it was a failure at the time, but I've had other people be like, "Oh, like I thought that's what the industry you were going to stay in." I'm like, "Well, that changed because I learned quickly that it was not the industry that we should be in, and I'm going to pivot, and so that way I don't waste my own time because like you said, so many people can spend so much time, and I think there's a very fine line between giving up too soon when it's just hard and you have to work through it. But there are indicators that you will see. There are indicators where you're like, okay, maybe this is on us that our process isn't working, or maybe we just like don't know that industry well enough. So we need to really buckle down and understand it and then see how it works.
Yeah.
And then there are times where it's not where you're supposed to be and you have to know to cut and walk away because again, that's time spent that could be on an industry that you either know or that you're better at or that just comes easier to you. That's like really those are like big lessons. I think a lot of people, it's hard for them to get out of their own way. So if I was, let's just say you were to start a brand new business tomorrow, what would you like? How would you start a business now? I know you and I've talked about AI quite a bit. You are for, I feel like, your generation, it's not as AI friendly, and you are very AI friendly. I would love to hear your thoughts on AI and just in general, like new technologies. And if you were to start a new company tomorrow, what would you do?
And I think if I was to start a new company tomorrow, I would probably do the same thing that I'm doing now, because it allows me to have that freedom, the flexibility, but also to be able to utilize now all the technologies that I didn't have 30 some years ago. When we first started, the only way for me to get a resume was if somebody sent me a fax and it came through a thermal paper, then I had to make a copy of that, or they put it in the mail and it took 3 to 5 days to get a resume. So everything moved, at a snail's pace a lot of times back then, just because, of the process. Now, between, getting on Messenger, getting on Zoom, getting, with emails, with everything else, there's so much more information and tools that will help you be successful. But the key here, and that's where I tell everybody that is in this business that is looking again, those are tools. That's not the end all. I mean, in my business we use LinkedIn. LinkedIn, came on in the marketing and it's gangbusters and that's the end all be all. No, it's getting on the phone and building relationships. Again, that's just one tool that you're using. AI
Yep.
is a tool to make you to do things, maybe more efficient, a little bit quicker. But again, it's not the end all be all.
I
So
think too many people like rely too heavily on tools, like you said, and think like, well, I sent 100 messages on LinkedIn. Where's the business? It's like, you know how sales works. You know how recruiting works. It takes 7 to 10 touches before someone even considers having a conversation with you
right,
generally or buying. So that might mean you have to email them, finding their cell phone and calling them, maybe even shooting them a text if they don't feel as invasive and say, hey, reach out to you. LinkedIn Messenger, sending them mail, whatever it is. I think there's so many creative ways to reach out to people. Social media has made that's a big conversation. I have a small business. It's like, well, I posted on social media. Why aren't people buying from me? And it's like, because you aren't doing all your revenue generating activities. You have to
yeah.
do way more than that. It's not just that.
Well, and that's why in any business where if you're an entrepreneur, you definitely have to be able to be adapt and involved, and be able to pivot and be flexible and want to learn and keep learning. And that's why in the beginning you asked me, where's that, the end for you? And again, do you feel that you're there? And things are getting easier, but you're always learning and growing. And when you think that, oh, this is, I'm here, that's
Something
when
changes.
that's exactly, or oh, I'm comfortable now. That's when then you're not getting up and moving. When you don't get up
That's
and
the
move,
danger zone.
that's
Yeah.
the danger zone, is comfort.
hmm yeah, and I feel the same way. I think I've had this conversation so many times with, especially like a lot of small, like startup agencies, because marketing agencies are like going up like crazy because everyone needs marketing. Everyone is looking at marketing as, a way in to start a business. It's
Yeah.
not just creating social media. There's so much more that goes into it. But a big thing with these small agencies, they're like, well, I have all the clients I need right now. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. You need to build a pipeline that's always going because I know that client could call you tomorrow and be like, hey, our budget just got cut in half. We have to cut
Yeah.
this. Marketing is the first to go at any company. It has been the statement of any company. Marketing is usually the first to go. And so I always tell people that I'm like, even if it's a small business or a large corporation, even if you're in a contract, anything can change, which is why I do like 60-day outs to buy us time. So if someone does need to cancel, they absolutely can in a contract, but it gives us a little bit of flexibility where I'm like, okay, now I need to go even harder on sales during this time, or my pipeline's really full. But
Yeah.
I think people get they rest on their laurels and they just say, oh, everything's good now. Everything's great. I can sit back. I'm like, you're a business owner. That's not real. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
So, closing ceremony here, Mark. You've been amazing. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on. What is like maybe one piece of advice that you give any aspiring entrepreneur, or like one statement or quote or anything that would really leave our listeners with, that you would say for anyone who's looking to start a business or is currently struggling with the business or as an entrepreneur? What would you say to them?
I guess, thinking, well, persistence, consistency, discipline, those are all buzzwords, and you really need, in a business. But I would say, most importantly, a purpose. And what I mean by that is in a purpose in what you do, because when you care deeply about your mission or what you're trying to do, success becomes more of a byproduct. In where I'm going with this is a byproduct of your passion. So at the end of the day, and that's what I tell everybody when I prep candidates, going in for interviews. I go, 50% of it is you as a person. What's your passion? What's your interest? And I always tell the example of, I have to unfortunately close doors with candidates that went in after the interview and said, boy, I didn't like it going in, but I really like the opportunity now. And then the client comes back to me, we're closing the door because he goes, Mark, do I think he can do the job? Yes. Do I think he wants to do the job? He just didn't come across like this was anything. And we want people that want to be here. So it's having that passion, having that purpose is key in anything you do in life.
Amen to that. And just I couldn't agree more with you on that.
So,
Thank you so much for coming on, Mark. You're an inspiration to me and so
well,
many, and I'm just proud of you for what you've built in the community with Natek being, a company for over 30 plus years. You've built a beautiful life. Obviously, I'm engaged to your son, so I'm feeling a little biased on that, but truly, ever since I've known you, you've been a really big inspiration. So anyone out there who needs recruiting support in the energy space, Natek Corporation is definitely your go-to. Mark Dillon, thank you so much for your time today.
great.